Okay, let's talk about the Penguin season finale. Hopefully, I mean, can I drive like this? Is this okay? Will I get pulled over for driving like this? Back hurts. I'm not gonna do it. Guess what? We're talking about the Penguin. You're gonna get a dark review. Okay. So I have a lot of thoughts. Hopefully I can access them. So I like that he is a supervillain. It is a complete rejection of, which was fun for a very long time. I will say a very long time. It's like, oh, imagine how the villain feels, or what's the villain's perspective? And then you're like, oh, I kind of get why they do this. You know, they kind of have a relatable origin story where you're supposed to be like, yeah, despite all your awfulness that I can objectively, like, I can understand why you're doing these, but your awfulness is bad, right? Like, you know, the easiest go-to example would be obviously Thanos. Like, oh yeah, you're kind of you're like offering a genocidal solution to, oh no, we don't have enough stuff. Well, what if we just sent less people? Okay, and then he has the whole, like, there was full bellies and stuff like that. Whatever. Probably not the best example, but a very easy and accessible example. Or take even the Riddler, where you're like, oh, he, you know, something, whatever. But yeah, so the Penguin, Oswald Cobb, has zero redeemable qualities at the end. I thought they were gonna, at some point, there was gonna be some redeeming, because you liked the guy for a long time, and then at the end, it's just like, no, he is a supervillain. A perfect example of just, he is bad because he is bad. He came out bad, he stayed bad, he had opportunities to have, you know, some redeeming qualities, and then completely gone. And then at the end, you're kind of like, oh, so, like, wait, this is low-key a little bit about Sophia, and she's the one you're like, oh, I kind of actually relate to her and sympathize with her. Oh, that's what that is. I can't move that. I sympathize with her, and she's kind of the villain where you're like, oh, I get it. She's obviously killed a lot of people and is really bad, but, like, I kind of get it. Jesus, man. Penguin? Nothing. No. And I'm gonna be honest, there were two moments in the last two episodes where I was like, audibly like, no. And it was one when he killed his brothers, and two when he killed Vince. I'm like, is it really? Like, what? Is this actually happening? And then it happens, you're like, oh. And then I was like, there's for sure Vincent is gonna be alive. Like, there's no way. He's gonna, like, maybe not at the end of this season, but I was like, the next season's gonna start with him being like, you know, and then something like that. Even if there is a next season, I would be perfectly fine if they didn't do another season of the show. Like, just leave it as, like, this is the origin story. You know, he obviously was already the Penguin in, you know, the Batman movie, but, you know, this is his rise to power type thing. But yeah, and then I Googled it. I'm like, are other people feeling that, like, Vince is low-key alive? And I guess the guy who wrote it, or the director or whatever, was like, no, he does kill him, and he kills him for these reasons. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, I think the reason the director gave was he was like, it's because Vince saw him while he was weak and he can't have weakness. But in the moment, I interpreted it as when Vince was like, you're like family to me. He saw the idea of having family as weakness. As sort of as sort of a like, I don't want anyone to be able to use anything against me, so I'm gonna kill you myself. Because like, yeah, if he didn't kill Vincent there, like, who's to say, like, I mean, the whole show was about doing the worst things to people, which was killing your wife, killing your brother, stealing and kidnapping your mom, and stuff like that. The worst things imaginable. And it's like, if he had feelings for Vince, whatever type of feelings those were, they could be used against him. But yeah, I guess him being like, oh, he saw him as weakness and he can't have that or whatever, which was part of the speech at the end too. But I saw it. I had more like my interpretation of it. But yeah, and it's just so fun. It's so fun to just have a character, because we haven't had that in a long time. I remember growing up, the fun thing was always to say, you always know the bad guy's gonna win, so these movies aren't even that fun. And then, of course, you get Infinity War, and Thanos objectively wins, and everyone's like, oh, finally. And then, but the Dark Knight movies, were so complicated because it's like the Joker kind of wins, stuff like that. But yeah, wasn't expecting him to have murdered his brothers, was not expecting him to murder Vince, was not expecting the thing with the mom. Oh my goodness. I fucking hate you, you're the fucking devil. And then the way he just like, the way like she goes fucking and the way he wasn't even, which like I almost expected when he didn't confess, like, yeah, I fucking killed him. They're like, we were gonna chop off her finger, you fucking psychopath. And then she's like, Sophia's like, wait, you don't actually care about her. It's all kind of like, and that's when you kind of realize it's a delusion. It's not that he actually cares about his mom. It's that the idea of caring about his mom or whatever. But I almost half expected the show to be like the unreliable narrator, where like when he takes Sophia out, and which one I was like, oh, he's gonna give her to the cops, and then he put the gun up to her, and I was like, oh, he's gonna kill her? It's like, no, I thought he was gonna give her to the cops, and the cops came, and you're like, oh. I almost half expected him to be like, by the way, I didn't kill my fucking brothers, and then you see like what actually happened, and it was like, or you get a different perspective, or you see something out, you get another tidbit where you're like, oh, he didn't kill his brothers, and then obviously that would lead into something like him not killing Vince and being like, we're actually into this together, and then him confessing to his mom like while she was a vegetable, or maybe like she didn't turn to a vegetable, and being like, I didn't fucking kill him, I would never do that, I love them, like how could you even think I did that? Which I feel like a version of that script was probably written, and then maybe someone was like, no, let's just make him all bad, he is a comic book supervillain, let's make him a comic book supervillain, the worst thing imaginable, his own mother being like, you are the devil. Oh, gee, why do people do that? You are the worst, you are the devil, stabbing him, like, I've always fucking hated you. Which, like, you think in the moment of weakness of, like, when she was gonna have him killed, when he was a child, you almost have to think it's like, she didn't because she's, like, already lost so much, and, like, I want to believe that he is gonna do these things for me. And then you also think it's like, maybe he killed him but he didn't mean to. Whatever went through her head. Or maybe she's like, I could never do that, blah, 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 blah. And then he does, like, take care of her for a number of years. And you always want to believe that your son didn't kill his siblings. But yeah, he took care of her for a number of years and all that stuff. Shit, sorry. What's that? Shut up. yeah, great show. Really good, really fun. Really happy they just made him awful.